Keeping with the vision of the international awareness, ConHill launched its campaign of 16 days of activism. Now, throughout the 16 days, they will raise awareness among South African men and create conversations that will highlight the micro-manifestations of patriarchy and toxic masculinity in spaces of our society. The campaign was launched under the theme Kwanele, Communities United in Preventing Violence Against Women and Children. Well, to tell us more, we are joined in studio by Mike Mpanya from the Men Imbizo, as well as Nolubabalo, who is the Public Programs Manager at the ConHill. Lady and gent, it's great to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Pleasure, bro.
Thank you. Let's talk about the programs that will be happening throughout the 16 days of activism that you guys have planned out, that will be rolling out.
Okay, so we started on the 25th of November. We launched it formally, and it goes on all the way through to the 10th of December. And it's different things. So you've got exhibitions, you've got dialogue, you've got a children's festival, you've got, so it's a mixture of things so that anyone who thinks that this is what they identify the best with can become part of our campaign.
Mike, let's speak about your role in these 16 days of activism in terms of the programs that you'll be participating in.
So basically, we're going to be doing the Men's Imbizo. And what the Men's Imbizo is the coming together of men to have a conversation about men in society. One of the missing parts of our gender-based violence campaigns has been actually getting the participation of men in being a part of the solution. And I think that this is really unacceptable, seeing that men, by and large, are the root of the problem. So the Men's Imbizo is a space for us to engage with men and try to create progress on this issue.
Why do you think there's been that gap where men almost feel like they distance themselves from gender-based violence, that it's an act more than it is a social norm or social construct that has become part of men?
I think one of the things is that many men have been taught that gender-based violence is an individual phenomenon, meaning it's something that occurs between one man and one woman. But in reality, gender-based violence is a systematic problem. And the reason why men are so disconnected is because it's a system, not an individual event. And we saw this recently with men being offended, many men not understanding the Men Are Trash hashtag, viewing it as an attack on them.
Absolutely.
Whereas the hashtag was reflecting a system. The statement was about the system of patriarchy that exists between men and women.
Nolubabalo, this is just, one of the programs that will be happening, tackling, GBV. Let's talk about some of the other issues or themes that have been explored throughout, the programs that you guys are running. You spoke about an exhibition. I saw one that was really reflecting the current South African society, talking about, the kind of state that we're in, and it's not looking pretty.
Okay, so I always like to emphasize that at Constitution Hill, we aren't only active in these days. So this is what we do weekly, it's what we do monthly. This is basically our life, right? But for example, one of the exhibitions that touched me is it's an exhibition that speaks about the role of the matriarchs in our society. So it's called Itulo lo Mama Bona Izwe Lakowethu, so we've got that kind of thing. We've got initiatives which take kids from as early as 4 years old, where we start unpacking these topics, because Mike will tell you, we've got this broad idea of gender-based violence is a thing that starts from families, it starts from young children. And so when we get to them in grade 11, or when we get to them as adults, it's too late, right? So that's why I say it's a rich program, because it's those exhibitions. So every exhibition we have, we patch it up with a dialogue where people engage and discuss the exhibition and what the themes are.
As a woman in South Africa, what are your thoughts about 16 days of activism? We've seen other groups, not particularly liking the concept that it is 16 days. And I like what you say about ConHill in particular. As an institution, you do this sort of thing throughout the year. But the concept that there are 16 days in a year put aside for, raising awareness or seeing TV adverts or, really focusing and honing in on GBV. What are your thoughts?
So the space that we work in is amazing in the sense that there's your calm activist groups where we talk and discuss. Then we have your radicals. We've got the total shutdown movement as part of our stable. Our idea is, well, my personal idea is that every day is a day that South Africans should be talking out, should be speaking out. And so we're not, as I say, we're not limited to the 16 days, but if you want my personal opinion, it needs to be harsh, it needs to be cruel, it needs to be unpretty. It needs to be a discussion that goes beyond discussions. It needs to be a thing which says, so from today, what is the next step? What are we doing? And ConHill is a lekgotla for organizations like that. I don't think we can do it on our own. We have Mike here who's, like everyone is welcome to come through and say, you know what, today we've had enough. I think this is what we do. And we look at things and we take people with us.
And speaking of reaching men, Mike, how do we do that? How do we reach the men who, for example, will not be a part of these discussions, who, for example, are not particularly on social media and engaging in these issues, men who are probably sitting where they're sitting thinking that the behavior is right?
And this is where men have to come into play and actually go to the places where these men are. So over the last few years, we've had Imbizos in the areas. I think last month we had one in the Shibeen, we've had one at universities, had one in companies and government departments. And what we've realized is that men are more willing to talk to men. And that is actually how the Imbizo came about, was realizing as a man that when I went to meetings to support women, to try to fix my own toxicity, realizing that the same men are in the room. And we actually created this space so that men can come together, because there's a different attraction when it's a man speaking to another man about male behavior.
Are we going to see more men who are abusive to our women and our children take accountability in the next coming years? And are we going to see people being not only held accountable, but also losing social standings and a certain level of respect, or losing some of the things that are associated with being a certain man?
I think that that's a very important question, and honestly we have come to a new national moment. I think last week we saw it very vividly when the president pulled out of an interview with a top media player, is that society no longer finds it acceptable for men to be a part of gender-based violence, but that's in the public space. And something important is that, like Nolu said, we're having this conversation at Constitution Hill. And the Constitution opens up with a preamble that says, we the people. And that's what we oftentimes miss. No matter what is legislated, no matter what is passed, no matter what judgment the Court rules down, until we the people actually begin to hold men accountable in our spaces, nothing's going to change. But I believe that people are at a space where they're ready to hold men accountable.
Oh, absolutely. Mike, Nolu, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic discussion, and thank you so much for the great work that you're both doing. That was, of course, Nolubabalo from ConHill, who is the Public Programs Manager, speaking to us about some of the events that will be taking place at ConHill. And of course, Mike, you heard him, very strong words for what has been taking place and the conversations that men need to continue to have in order for us to actually get rid of this scourge of gender-based violence.